Welcome to Travel Business Mastermind's Real Talk, a show with business owners talking about real issues that they are facing every day in their business. In our first episode, our inaugural episode, we're with David Chait, co-founder and CEO of Travefy, an award-winning itinerary, proposal, and client management platform for travel advisors that helps them save time, impress their clients, and sell more. David talks with us today about the importance of being ready to pivot when things change in your business. So grab a cup of coffee or whatever beverage you prefer and come and enjoy the conversation. Yep, we are.
It is now streaming. We're in it. Hello, everyone.
Well, everybody who is watching live, thank you for joining us. This is the first episode of Real Talk. I have been ranting all on my own for the last 4 months about what I see is going wrong in the industry. And now it's time to start having some somewhat uncomfortable, but more frank and honest, real discussions about ways out of this. And one of the things that I have heard ad nauseum the last few months is this concept of pivoting. I hear it on panel discussions and I see it in blogs, and quite a few travel advisors have asked me afterwards, even in the consulting business that I run, what does that mean? What do you do? And whenever I heard that question, the first face that appeared in my brain was our guest today, David Chait. Because David, when I first met David 3 years ago, we talked about the company Travefy and how it became. And David tells this great story that we are going to focus on today as sort of a Harvard business case study of what does pivoting mean? What does it look like? What are the steps you take? Because what many people don't know about Travefy is the company that it is today was not the original concept that it was created for. And we're going to walk through that. But before I do, David, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. And you know, I appreciate the opportunity to share some of our story and, you know, help with some real talk. But, Rich is someone, as you know, I love our times getting together, grabbing coffees, chatting. It's always fun, and it's cool to do it in this different setting.
It is. I left that cup of coffee with David at a Starbucks in Secaucus, riveted by this man's company, by his comprehension of this complex industry of travel and the really complex intersection of travel advisors and all these different entities. How David's tools work, and I want to get into that very shortly in case you don't know a lot about Travefy, how he gets this done with all of the different things that you could put into an itinerary is insane. So David is co-founder and CEO of Travefy. They have been winning awards for their itinerary tool. You can use their tool for proposals to clients. It can also be used as a client management platform for travel advisors that helps you guys save time. It puts across an image to your clients of incredible professionalism, and it allows you to grow your sales. Now, Travefy today powers thousands of travel organizations across the globe. And this is on both the travel advisor side as well as tour operators, resorts, people who are providing that content. And the company's been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Forbes, among many other publications. Before founding Travefy, and I did not know this until today, David served in the Obama administration as a senior policy advisor over at the U.S. Small Business Administration. He also has worked as a strategy consultant at McKinsey, advising Fortune 500 companies on a wide array of issues. I mean, David is just a font of knowledge and experience, and I am certain you're going to gain a lot by listening both to his company's story and his unique perspective on how small businesses can pivot. So David, real quickly,
Sure.
The company, how many years has Travefy been in business? Let's get a little bit deeper into what does it mean to be an award-winning itinerary, proposal, and client management platform. I want to get a little deeper into that. And then let's start talking about how you fit into the ecosystem.
Yeah, so Travefy has been around since 2013. Started as a germ of an idea kicking around in the preceding year. But as a company, 2013 is when we released our first products out into the market and have been operating since. So it's been a really, really exciting 7 years. One of the things that we're going to talk about though today is any entrepreneurial journey or your most typical entrepreneurial journeys are a series of really high highs and really low lows, times of crisis, times of success, times of fear. And so our journey has been all of those emotions, but we're really thrilled with where we are, with our B2B focus powering travel advisors, others, organizations to help them drive success. And so it's been a wild ride and a lot of fun.
So just to warn everybody, my son recently adopted a puppy and he has decided to come into the office that I'm sitting in. So if you hear some squeaky toys, I apologize in advance.
Well, welcome to COVID life.
Exactly. This is the life with COVID. So David, take us back to the beginning. You created a company that was B2C oriented and eventually you became B2B oriented. What is it you do today for travel advisors, for tour operators? How does Travefy fit inside this ecosystem?
Yeah, so today, Travefy, firstly, we're a SaaS or subscription software tool that is a critical part of when you think about the agent desktop and workflow. We're a critical tool that you can use to, number one, build your client proposals, again, all in your brand, that have all of that, number one, all of the disparate booking information or quotes that you may pull from a variety of suppliers where we integrate with your suppliers, have that there. But you can also layer on some of that great sales expertise where we've got integrated city guides, content, your own private library of things. You can share those with clients. You can actually capture their digital approval. So you have a record, they have a record, all of that. You can also create, again, those great final itineraries for your client that can be delivered as web, mobile, or PDF, all in your brand. Really great ways to sell and shine and deliver products to your clients the ways they want and expect in that digital, mobile, etc. And layered on top of all of that, we've got great chat, communication, and client management tools where you can have a great snapshot of all your clients with that information. You can use forms to collect information or decision-making tools for those itineraries and proposals. So really, again, that critical part of your workflow that helps you manage all of your great proposals and itineraries to shine, stay organized, do so efficiently, and sell more.
So a travel advisor, comes to a client, the client says, this is what I'm thinking about doing. They go out into the universe and start pulling from preferred partners, maybe some non-preferred partners. They want to send a proposal out and say, hey, I'm thinking of maybe one or two or more of these itineraries and permutations. Take a look. It's got my branding on it, not my, some other company like maybe the resort that I'm booking. Mm-hmm. And it packages all of that as a proposal. And then when the client says, let's go with this, now it converts over to an itinerary.
To an itinerary, which now delivers it as web, mobile, PDF, and allows you to augment. Some people with proposals, they might be very simple. Here is the resort, or maybe here's 2 resorts with some pricing for you to compare. Here's a flight, here's that. And then when it converts over to itinerary, you're going to add more flavor, flair, and expertise, a city guide for Rome, the restaurant recommendations, you're going to book something else, etc. Some people actually, the proposals are, think of it as a sales tool, marketing, where they actually are already that robust. And when it converts over, there might be some small changes, but it's kind of already there. We're a very, very nimble, flexible platform that adapts to the way you work. Because the one thing that's very cool, and as you know, there are no 2 travel advisors that operate the same, but that's also the beauty of the industry. That's why travel advisors are not a commodity. Everyone has their own unique way to operate, their own unique expertise, their own unique things that they're selling. Well, and so that's the, which we'll talk about a bit more when we get into the journey. So much of Travefy's roadmap and what we've done has come from feedback from users, but also the way our users are using things. And very often people use things for not the way you intend, and you learn things. So to your point, while Travefy, the current SaaS tools that advisors are using, these itineraries proposals are meant for interaction with your client. Here's your proposal, here's your itinerary. we've seen so many people use these for marketing purposes. Here's a sample of what a European adventure looks like. Contact me for things that we've learned so much. And in fact, one thing, you get the teaser here and thing. In about a month, we actually have some really, really exciting marketing tools that we're going to unveil to everyone based off of these things and how people are using it, where we go, oh, duh, of course you would use it for that. Let me help enable that in a way that even saves you more time.
So that product that David just described was not the product necessarily that he initially created.
Not at all.
So David, take us back to 2010, 2011, when you first started coming up with the idea?
2012.
2012.
So I had just left the Obama administration, where I'd been at the U.S. Small Business Administration, working with companies, across the country on technology ecosystems, helping with a lot of funding things in terms of the Great Recession and Recovery Act and things like that. And so I went back. I had actually left business school to go to the administration. So I went back and was finishing business school. And at that point, really had the bug of seeing people that had operated, seeing people that were building things. I loved it. I fell in love with what they were doing. And while I had a great, previous time in the consulting strategy industry, I wanted more operational ownership to build things. And so I think, as people naturally do, you look at things in your own life and say, what are pain points I have? What are frustrations? What are things? And that time in my life, I've always been a passionate traveler. And the pain points in my life were, I was going on a lot of bachelor parties at that point, and my wife, then fiance, actually it was not even fiance, then girlfriend, was going to a lot of bachelorette parties. I was going on trips with my classmates and found all of these group travel headaches. All those coordination headaches, all those things you hear, the frustrating lack of transparency, the awkwardness with money where someone's getting stuck with the bill, communication issues, et cetera, and said, let's look around. And there weren't comprehensive tools. There were great things that did a single thing. Venmo was just emerging at that time. It was kind of the earliest stages of those types of payment settlement platforms. You had OTAs that were, places that some people were buying individual things, but there wasn't coordination, there wasn't group. There was no high touch with that. There were chat communications, GroupMe was coming out, et cetera, but there wasn't a comprehensive thing. And so myself and working with my co-founder, Chris, we went, let's solve this. This is something we want in our own lives. So many people start with things, and what is our worst case scenario? We're building, I'm in school, he's working, we're building something. If this works, it's a business. This is fantastic. And if it doesn't, we solved our own issue. Now I, have a better way to go to Eric's bachelor party. And so that's what we built. The first version of Travefy was a group travel planner, tools to collaborate on trip details, build rich shared itineraries, and track and collect group expenses. And we built it. We put it out there. We had some good initial traction. So we then actually had some capital. And when I graduated with my MBA, we did this full time. We dove in head first, ourselves, our families, our things, and we set out in doing this. And so Travefy was a B2C group travel planner. And
how many employees did you have at the start?
At the start, it was inclusive of ourselves. It was 4 of us. So It was myself and Chris, and then we had 2 founding team members who had joined us in the process of building. And it was, we just, we dove in and did it and put it out there, and it was exciting. It was, very, very different time where you just kind of, you take the leap. And every advisor, everyone has taken that leap where you say, I want to go into business. I want to try it. And we put it out there.
So how long into your launch did you start to realize that, and how did you realize that perhaps your ideal client might be somebody different?
So it took well over a year or so. We started getting the inclinations after about a year, but it really took about 2 years till the decision was made. And part of that, and one of the lessons, is 2 things. We all hear be metrics driven. That's great. That's important. I'm an analytical person. That was not even new to me. I've always been metric driven. But the second thing is, make sure you're looking at the right metrics. Are these actual business drivers? And so two completely intellectually honest things about Travefy's consumer product. Number one, we were wildly successful. If you look at metrics of users, if you look at metrics of engagement, if you look at things like that, we had well over 1 million trips planned on the platform. Viral coefficient, we were a viral platform people were using and things. With that, we had incredible data where we were the go-to resource that people would look to for what's happening in group travel planning. So you look at, New York Times data for what is in 2014, 2015, what does a bachelorette party cost? They're citing Travefy aggregated and anonymized data because we had statistically significant data on all this stuff. We were a success. Other intellectually honest thing, we weren't a business. Consumers weren't buying things. That whole model was predicated on this is a free platform to build all of these disparate things. And hey, if you're using this, maybe ultimately you'll purchase some of these things that are served in there. Maybe you'll buy this hotel, this massage from this vendor, this thing, et cetera, built on APIs and affiliated products and marketing. And the conversion rates, while we, of course, were making money, the conversion rates weren't anything that I would consider attractive, wouldn't consider anything that is a big business. They just weren't there in consumer behaviors. And so that is a thing that, again, is a really, really challenging thing, which is, number one, for some people being metrics driven. Number two, challenging, is this actually the right metrics? We all want to pick a vanity metric that makes us sound great, makes us feel good. We have millions of trips. We have so many visitors a day. We have so many users. We would go places people would recognize. Travefy, holy cow, it's great. But is that a metric for a business? Is that a metric that allows us to make payroll, put food on the table of employees, build something sustainable? No, and it's really not the right metric. And so that was the reality, and that took time to find the right metrics and to have honest conversations with ourselves about what is the future of this.
So I'm assuming one of the key metrics you were looking at was revenue and profitability, or two of the key metrics you were looking at.
100% revenue and profitability, but then also, as you think about things, it's always on a per user, because it's all about scaling. So it's also on a per user basis, which is, bottom line, are you making more than you are costing? But then it's also, hey, because as you know, you might have big fixed costs, but smaller variable costs. You want to look at the unit economics for every user. Right. How much money do we make? Because there are, with certain types of things, even in our current business, where you go, we have all these big fixed costs, but at X number of users, because of their variable costs for each, you actually start to turn a profit and make money, and then it starts to grow exponentially. Right. And so that was what we're looking at there, and the math wasn't right. It's a reality, and the math wasn't right.
And I'll tell you, that alone is the first piece of big advice for any travel advisor right now who's watching this and trying to think through, this is what I used to do. I was comfortable doing it. I made enough money to pay the bills and then some. But now the world has changed, and maybe that market has shrunk. The market for that vacation style has shrunk. If you don't know how much you are making per unit, per vacation, if you're not aware of what these numbers are, you cannot do the projections to say, well, if my call volume has dropped by 80% and my close rate has dropped by 25%, this is my new number of units sold that I can project for the next 6 months. Now layer on that commission that you used to get. That's projecting numbers and deciding whether or not you need to pivot. And of course, now DJ has to chime in.
Yeah. It's a group conversation.
It's an opportune time. So David, what were the numbers that you saw that made you realize, hey, wait a second, there might be another way to do this?
Yeah, no, I mean, so there were really two things. And so where I say we've always been a metrics driven organization, even when we sometimes were looking at the wrong metrics or had to have some real talk internally, we were always tracking everything and looking at dashboards and things. And two phenomenon over the course of the entirety of this that were happening was, number one, looking at daily active users. So not number of trips, not number of accounts, which were both vanity metrics and were very sexy. But who's actually using this platform often? And our expectation when you think about a group travel planning platform, how often are your heavy users using it? A couple times a year. Obviously, in the duration leading up to a trip, you're using it daily, and then it's planned, and then you have your on trip and all of that. But if you want to just roll that all into one thing, I don't know, your typical user's probably using it once, where they're going on a trip that requires that coordination, and your heavy users might be people at the life stage we were all at that time, where 3 times a year.
Right.
We had a daily active user segment that was on there literally every day and for a really long period of time every day. And they were planning lots and lots of trips. And so the question that you naturally ask are, who are these people and what are they using it for? Because this is an anomaly and a good data anomaly. Similarly, we've always been a feedback-driven organization where we send out emails for feedback. We have chats for feedback. We have things. And so what we were seeing when we were contacting these people were also the people that were coming in and giving us advice and asking us questions and things. And who were these people? These were travel advisors that were looking for better ways to communicate with their customers, better and branded delivery of itineraries. And a lot of that stuff we didn't have yet, but they could see better delivery, better drag and drop interfaces. And so they were using Travefy for not our intended purpose, but for this client management, itinerary delivery, proposal delivery. And, we looked through it, did some analysis, and cliched phrases exist for a reason, but the phrase right product, wrong market exists because that's a common thing. And that is 100,000% what we did. We built a great product and we tried to sell it to the wrong people.
So big lesson number 2, David and his team picked up the phone and asked these people, what are you doing right now? What do you need? Who are you? He was asking probing questions to get behind the metrics, to start to understand, is there a new business model here down the road? The third big lesson that you've told me is that it took a lot of emotional intelligence to navigate through these changes. It was not like you all of a sudden came up and said, hey, if we could get 10,000 people using it like this at a subscription fee like that, bam, we're golden, everybody just shift gears. The process of shifting gears was quite an arduous one.
It was a huge one, and it took years to fully happen. And it took years to fully happen for a number of reasons. So number one, some of the lessons you get out of things is you need to test. And so while we had this inkling just literally from how do we go in and service and sell to a B2B agent market, you're not going to just on a dime turn and start building something different. And that was, we tested. We did a carve out of the platform and we made some changes based off of initial feedback we heard, and we put a price point on it and we sold it and we learned. And then we kept building and changing and things. And that correlated with more and more people being on it until eventually, it didn't happen all at once. You look back and you go, oh, we have thousands of customers and they're paying us. And this is a profitable, P&L, a profitable segment within, this twofold piece of Travefy's business. And at that point, the product doesn't even, if you look at Travefy today versus that original group travel product, you wouldn't recognize, you wouldn't know it's the same software because that adapted happened. So that's one part of the change. The two other things that have to do with that, time and pace aside from that, is one, which is human capital, which is people, which is emotions, which is that original thing, right, wrong, good or bad, was people's baby. They had built it, they had put things in. For some people, they can be very unemotional about things, whether it's software you built or I do destination weddings or I do cruises or whatever the thing might be. That's your expertise, that's your thing. it's tough to let go. And so for some people in Travefy's team, it was, let's move on. This is the thing. Let's do that. For some people, it was a process. For some people, and it's okay. And good friends to this day, they were there to build sexy consumer tools. They didn't want to be a part of this, and that was great. And again, good friends, but that wasn't a journey they wanted to be a part of. So there's that. And then the third thing came down to, while they weren't paying customers, people who had built trips, we felt a commitment to them. They spent time and built an itinerary for the trip with their friends in 18 months or 12 months or 6 months to Montreal. And we weren't going to shut them down. While we had no obligation, legally, probably even morally, it's a free software. We felt, no, this is, where you can do good, you do good. And so aside from this scaling up, it took us years to ramp this down from, you can't create new accounts because we're not selling this, we don't want to service this, but letting these people have their trips, which also meant servicing the technology. And so it was a process that literally, even though we knew vaguely where we were going, we knew what the data told us, years to make that transition.
Wow.
Which some people might call crazy. Some people might say that was a terrible decision and you just, turn. But for us, it was a process for sure.
I mean, some people are going through that mental process and that emotional process right now. I talk to at least 2 or 3 travel advisors every single day for a variety of reasons. Some of them are steadfast. They're going to hold ground. Some of the destinations that are open today still work. So they're doubling down on that. Others, I think you saw it with cruise planners. Cruise planners is opening up a whole new land based push. Avoya, who's been heavily cruise for the longest time, has been slowly building its land wholesaler business and now is making an emphasis on that. And everybody's going through a lot of that emotional tumult. Was there ever a time you personally that you were like, is it worth it to take this chance? Or was there a point where you were just like, no, this is the right thing to do, and you just had the personal confidence that you were the leader who said, follow me, I can see where our next phase is?
A little bit of both, because again, none of this stuff is ever simple. Is to say that there weren't moments of self-doubt, to say there weren't moments of, are we crazy? Do we stay the course? Are we crazy? Do we shut down this thing? Are we crazy? Do we follow this? Those emotions all were there. And every one of those scenarios was a conversation, was a beer that was grabbed and, talked about and all of that. And so, nothing was ever 100%, but no, we saw the data, we talked to people, we recognized the market. And so while all of those emotions and things were there, we were confident that this was the right market. We fell in love with the advisor community. We also knew that we were going to do it in a prudent way, which was the testing and thing, that's how you counterbalance that. So we knew that, but absolutely. But also the other thing to recognize, and this is one of the things that, you and I have talked about, and I'm sure a lot of advisors are going through, is we knew A to B where we wanted to get. We knew, okay, we have this great infrastructure. We know it can serve this market really well. And we know that if we get from A to B, we have something that's adding value to an incredible community. We know that we have a business that is sustainable and can grow and, can do right by our employees, right by our customers, right by everything. But getting to A to B isn't that simple because you have things like payroll, you have things like that. You have a lot of those concerns and things like that. And that is what so many of the advisor community is going through now. Everyone's a prognosticator, and here's mine. Leisure travel will be back. Yes. Without a doubt. There is pent-up demand. People love to travel. We're all, excited for it. There is a point in the future where we will not just be back to where we were, but greater volumes. In the meantime, there are travel bans. There are fears, many well-founded, about traveling and the virus, et cetera. And so there are things that will have to happen before that. There will need to be better treatments or a vaccine. Bans will be lifted. And so as an advisor, you are saying to yourself, well, what do I do in the meantime? And so that's where, and we were there too, and that's where so many people are, whereas your number one thing is to survive. If you believe that it will be back, and if you don't, that's a different thing, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. But if you believe, whereas we felt getting to B will be the thing, well, shit, I got to make sure that I survive in that journey from A to B, and you do what you got to do. And so for everyone here, that's where the pivot comes in, which is, I know my cruise business will be back. I know my destination wedding business. I know my European adventures business will be back. But how do I make sure I survive then? Because they'll just survive or thrive. What do I do? Right. And that's where all the different things from either diversification or just stuff to pay the bills. I will tell you, in our journey in Travefy, and I can walk through later kind of how we evaluate what do you do as a thing or what do you do as a thing. We did stuff to pay the bills. We built stuff, think of like contract engineering for other companies where we said, okay, that will bring in money that allows us to spend some time building Travefy.
Right.
When we first got started, I was still for business school. When I was at Columbia, I was writing case studies for them and working with professors because that gave money that meant I could not pull out as much money from Travefy. You do what you have to do. And that's okay. And the thing that I think is most important is that's not failing. That's not losing. There's nothing shameful. That is surviving. That is doing what you got to do. That is running a business.
Yep. Travel has dried up to a good degree for me right now, but I've pivoted to personal coaches. I'm helping them build their brands and thinking through their stories and filling out their website content. Did I ever expect I'd be working with that clientele? No, but they're still making money because people are going through inflection points in their lives. And that's my pivot right now, is just finding other verticals that like you said, put money back into my cash flow so I can get to the point again where, my clients are more flush with cash and can come back to me. Yep.
Absolutely.
So, one of the things that I lament when I work with travel advisors is too many of them do not know what their cash flow looks like. They don't know month to month, seasonality, different types of trips and vacation styles versus others in terms of size of transaction. How much were you in your numbers as you were going through this transition? Were you in there every day, looking at things every week? How did you have the confidence that the way you were managing your cash and your expenses, that you could get to the other side?
I mean, I look at our numbers even to this day, daily. That's a ritual, I guess you could say, is my day starts with running our QuickBooks and looking at, what are our KPIs, which are different than they were then, but things around, number of users, actives, bottlenecks, things of that sort, which let you know the health and where you need to focus. And not saying that an advisor, you need to every day go through your data and thing, I might be a little extra on that, which I own. But it's important to be familiar with that. It's important to talk about what are your key performance indicators, key pieces of data that you're constantly looking at, what are changes, what are the things to look for, because there are things that may be surprising. Because again, data helps remove emotion. And we're all emotional beings, and we all have to own that there's things that we want data to say. There's things that we want to see. And in the course of, working with and talking with advisors, we often just get questions and have these, great long conversations with people, and you uncover lots of great things that are really helpful for a business. And, some examples of the types of things is you'll say to someone, so what's your business? Tell me about your travel business. What do you do? And, they'll name some type of travel. I do XYZ type of travel predominantly, and I love it, and it's great, and it's thing, and that's my bread and butter. Right. And I also dabble a little in this. And you go, okay, well, what is the, net of everything? What do you take home from one of these versus one of these? And this thing makes that much more. And in fact, even though it's 20% of their business by number of trips, it actually is 60% of their revenue. Well, you're in that business actually. And if you love doing this other thing, feel free to do it, but You have to know the reason why you're doing it. You're doing it because you love it. You're doing it because it's an entree to doing this other type of trick for people. There's 100 reasons why that would be a great thing. But from a return on investment, return on your time, if you're wanting to scale, you should be doing that other thing. And that's where digging down and going into metrics, going back to the example of that consumer business versus, the agent business we love, by number of accounts, literally the agent business can never be as big as the consumer business was. Right. It's math. It can never be. And so if you look at surface level metrics, vanity metrics certain people want to see, you'd go, oh my God, go do this consumer business. You have millions of users and things and that's great. But if you look at ROI, you look at other things, no. This is a business and you're doing good and you're making impact in your thing. This is not it. And so that data is incredible, and getting into your data, having trusted mentors who can help you, get into it, can challenge you on things. Why is that important? What does that tell you? What did you learn from that is critical to success. And I'm grateful to mentors who over the years have challenged me and my assumptions and, pushed me.
When I owned a coffee shop, and I set up a point of sale tool, Square, it became my point of sale. I got rid of these cash registers and I brought Square in. And one of my previous employees, she was still there, kind of like an assistant manager. Why do you want this tool here? Why are you making me change? I know how to do things quickly on the cash register. And I said, because I kind of know my variable costs and I kind of know my fixed costs. And what I want to do is really bore down on those things that have the higher margins and start to figure out on the low margin things that barely make me any money. Is that a loss leader? If they come in and buy this, that I'll give them a package deal and I'll know what my profit looks like on that, because now I'm selling more of my higher margin products. And she just couldn't get on board with the concept. But until I put Square in and could download every single day, everything we sold, including any add-ons to a breakfast sandwich or something, and know, well, that avocado cost me 47 cents and I split it 4 ways over 4 sandwiches and we charged 57 cents per, and now all of a sudden you saw the numbers and you're like, holy crap, we need to sell more of those. We need to figure out a way to market more of that. We need to have the store reflect that we have these wonderful flavored add-ons and get people to spend that money. And she never could come aboard with that. She kind of understood it esoterically, but she never understood why I was doing what I was doing. Without the numbers, I could have never went there.
Exactly. It helps rationalize, because change is difficult. Introspection is difficult. All of these things, these are human emotions. There's nothing wrong with them. They're realities, and
right.
And things that don't lie are data. Right. Data's real.
Yes, it is. So a lot of travel advisors are being forced to pivot. Do you think that is more difficult to be forced because you don't have the cash flow right now and you don't know when Ocean Cruises is going to be going again, therefore you don't know when the commission checks are going to be coming in? That's sort of pressure to go do it. Do you think one or the other in any of your experiences gives you an indication that, hey, it's much worse having to pivot now because it's not necessarily a choice?
Well, I think, I am so empathetic for everyone in the industry, from advisors to suppliers to technology providers to anyone. There is no one not impacted, no one not facing the most challenging probably scenario of their careers, because to your point, not only are we in a no travel or limited travel environment, but there's an unclear future. There's an unclear in terms of the duration. Right. We all know that, as I said, leisure travel in particular will be back. But a great quote that I heard early on in this, when someone said, well, how bad is this? And they said, the duration will determine the depth of the crisis. And that's exactly it. And we don't know the depth of the impact because we don't really know when this will end. And so I think that pivoting is never easy. It will always be a challenging. So at a surface level of the things you have to do, the questions you have to ask, et cetera, I don't know that it's any more difficult now than another point, but again, the reality of human emotion and the reality of fear that everyone is facing in that not knowing how long you have to do this for, things like that, I think does make it more difficult because there is not just a business action that should be done or needs to be done, but there is an emotional and a fear component. And with that, you know, you're not alone. Everyone knows it's challenging, and I do think that adds a layer on. And you know, while it may not be helpful with that, you know, we're all in this together. But to your question, I do think it is more challenging than ever. Not in the list of 50 things you have to do and check the box to do it, but because it's a scary time, and that's the reality. And it's, you know, again, heartbreaks for everyone. We're all in
It's
this.
insane. I feel like I'm more of a therapist every day on the phone with my clients and travel advisors who are friends. Although it is starting to pick back up again, we are starting to hear the phones are ringing more frequently. You know, I guess
We're seeing that too as well.
I was going to say, you probably are seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, we get to be a leading indicator of what's going on because, again, we're that critical system, because it's being used for everything from really upstream on, hey, you know, Sally Smith, I'm thinking of planning a trip in XYZ, all the way to the journey and seeing that the trip happens, et cetera. So we saw the impacts on our clients, which of course reverberated for us, but in terms of that very early on, in terms of how things were shutting down, cancellations, et cetera. And we're starting to see, and again, it's all relative, but there's more and more going on. And if that trend continues, and hopefully it starts to get an exponential curve, it's not yet, to be perfectly honest, but we're seeing more and more stuff happen, which is great.
David, as we start to get towards the wind up on this, are there any metrics now that you watch more closely to see if you have to pivot a second time? Or is it, you know, are there statistics that you're watching where you're thinking, maybe there's a new vertical we can go into, or there's ways for us to alter our business to put in that cash flow if travel's down?
Yeah, you know, for us, and again, this is different for all businesses, our core offering is at a maturity level in terms of usership, in terms of things where we would never pivot away. You know, Travefy, our itinerary proposal, et cetera, tools are here to stay. And that's a grateful point that we are at and things we see. But in terms of where growth comes, what do we do? I mean, that really goes back to the same couple things, which is looking at several pieces of data constantly, which is, number one, what are people doing and using with our tools that may not be intended ways and things, but also listening to that feedback. You know, when you talk with our client champion team or our customer success team or send us notes, those are all getting read, and we're aggregating. Not that, you know, the reality when you have thousands upon thousands of organizations on the platform, it's not that one piece of feedback. If, you know, John Smith says, Trav, if I go build this, we're going to do it. I mean, there's inertia, it's a ship. But when you hear that enough and you see the data, that aggregated together determines our roadmap. And everything that we've released comes from that. So forms this year came from the decision-making hacks we saw on proposals and people asking for ways to get that client information into the itineraries. And we went, okay, we can build that. And so all of the different things that we grow, as we honestly start, you know, adding new features and things that, to your point, tackle different problems than we originally started. It's not coming from us making guesses, us making assumptions, us saying we want to be in that business. It comes from you, the users, and what you're doing and what you're asking for. And so that's also why, you know, sometimes the growth in a I think a good way, may seem in terms of verticals and other things sort of slow or things like that, because I think when a company says, okay, we want to be in this business, we want to be in the this widget business, they go and they build the entire thing, you know, and we'll call it, you know, an ivory tower approach of it's never in front of a user. And so you might build it wrong, you might think, whereas if we hear, you know, Trav, I'd be great to do that, we're going to build a minimum viable product, an MVP, something that solves your problem, but is probably in a good way, the least functionality that we think solves your problem and the least development time to put it out there and learn. And so a year from now, it might be this big thing based off of your feedback and how you're using it that is a whole new vertical that Travefy never touched. But version one's going to be, this. Proposals were that. Proposals were, we started seeing people call some itineraries, which is where we started proposals. And we went, I guess that really, of course, is a different thing. And then suddenly, we had a carve out where you literally can treat them separately. And then we had an approvals workflow with custom terms because you needed, to actually capture that. And so then we built in this whole PDF document capture so you have your record. And then we added the forms for decision-making tools because you might not know when you send the proposal whether they want to go on the dolphin swim or the beach pina colada excursion. And that didn't happen overnight. And I think we deliver better product by doing it piece by piece than had we, what do I know? Had myself and, a couple people from the team said, all right, let's name the 15 features we need. We'd have gotten it wrong.
Right.
I have no doubt we'd have gotten it wrong.
And I think that's an excellent, I think it's lesson number 4, which is, that's another reason to pick up the phone and call your clients right now. Because as you talk to them about their vacation needs, about their ease my stress recreation needs, who knows what kind of feedback you're going to start getting. And is there a way that you can expand your revenue stream now somehow? Because they're giving you that honest feedback and they're helping you build your business. If you're not doing that, if you're not constantly talking to your clients, you're going to have to try to brainstorm on your own what to do next for your business. And you could get it all wrong very easily.
I agree with that 100%. I also think that you have to know the problem you're solving before you try to think, and no two business like no two things. If I were running a travel agency business right now, I would also be asking myself, and it can be all of these things or none of these things, what am I trying to solve for right now? Am I literally just trying to pay the bills? Meaning, I don't care what it is. I'm not thinking about this long term because I know my business doing XYZ will be back. And that's what I want to be doing. I just need cash and I need this much cash to keep the lights on, pay the bills, do the thing. Or I think, and again, it could be some in between, but to be binary, or is it the opposite, which is it's not about the immediate cash infusion. It's I'm looking to diversify and build another line of business that in the long run, I have 2 streams.
Right.
What you do in those situations are entirely different things. If you are just thinking about cash, this might be counterintuitive. People in the industry might not think that this is a great thing. You don't need to be doing anything in travel necessarily. You need to go find something that pays the bills that allows your travel business to flourish in the future.
Right.
That can be anything. And look, I grew up in a business like that. My father owned a video store, and there were times where my mother was selling encyclopedias. There were times where he was doing different jobs and things to keep the lights on. And that's okay because it was about cash. It was about literally keeping the lights on. Or if it's the other thing, it's you can take your time and call your customers and figure out, what? I have great expertise that I could be doing this type of travel, and I'll start investing today in the right website for that, the right experiences for that, the right certifications, calling customers and building the book of business so that 18 months from now, I'm the expert that also does that, and I have that diversified. It could also be somewhere in between, but you need to know what you're solving for so that you can optimize your chances of success.
Right. I would have to say I probably could not just build a business from scratch off of some blank canvas because that's not the way my brain works. So, what did I think of as a pivoting? I just said, who looks and feels like a travel advisor who still has work right now? And it was easy for me to choose a vertical. Could I come up with a whole new business strategy? That's not my skill set. I'd be very limited unless I was hearing some kind of feedback from other people saying, there's a gap over here. There's, like you said earlier, people are having a problem. They're looking for a solution. They don't seem to have a service provider who's doing it very well. But gee, look at your skill sets. You actually could help fill that gap. that's not the way my brain works unless somebody bangs me over the head with a hammer. I mean, my one pivot story on my side, my parents owned a lumber yard. And when Lowe's and Home Depot were starting to crush the independent lumber yards on Long Island, my brothers started a manufacturing company. So they were making wood planters for these very expensive garden stores, independent garden stores, and they pivoted. So they were always working in lumber. They had all the equipment in the building because the lumber yard also did some custom manufacturing, and they decreased their exposure to retail sales, and they increased wholesale finished product. And that's the way you have to think, especially in a situation like this, where if you do need to pay the bills and you don't have the luxury of money and time, that you've got to sit there and figure out where can I take my skill set and apply it somewhere else. I have several travel advisor friends who their businesses have been put on part-time, and they're working full-time 5 days a week right now in some kind of paid job with health benefits. Yeah.
And just to be clear, I want to reiterate, what I said earlier is that is beyond admirable and is heroic.
Yes.
That's not defeatist. And I will say, going back to, seeing things like that as a kid, that made my parents heroes.
Absolutely. My brothers, when they pivoted the lumberyard, they did it with confidence, and they didn't look at themselves as saying, wow, we didn't know how to defeat Home Depot and Lowe's. They said, we just figured out a way to keep paying our bills for our families and raising our families. Absolutely. There is no shame in survival and in figuring out how to thrive in something new. That's not a defeated. Yeah. That's not defeat. That's actually victory, because you were thrown defeat and you could have accepted it, but your reaction was, no, I'm not giving up. I'm fighting on.
Well, especially, bringing it back to a very positive, optimistic thing. Like I said, I am so bullish on the future of leisure travel. I cannot overstate enough, because there's just so much pent up demand that at the point in time where, a couple boxes are checked, which are big ones in terms of restrictions and in terms of treatments and in terms of things, that by surviving and maintaining your business intact, you have put yourself 90% of the way there to having an incredible future. There's a big wave coming, and just being there will let you capture it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no reason to say that if you shifted away from cruises, that you can't come right back to it later on. I mean, we are hoping to see the no sail order lifted soon. We haven't heard anything from the CDC, but if they do, and maybe we get a couple of sailings in before the end of this year, you got lots of time to jump back in with your marketing and reach out to your cruise clients and get them interested again. So, you can repivot and maybe now you've got another revenue stream, also that is actually making your business build. Who knows? You've got a wealth of riches now. David, thank you so much. I cannot wait to meet you somewhere for an actual cup of coffee.
I know, I need people.
I am
it will
so
happen soon
enough. But I want to thank you for taking the time out. I'm so grateful to hear that everybody's healthy in your house, and that you guys are adapting to this crazy environment. So with that, thank you so much. When I can bring you back again, we'll come up with a new topic, because just seeing your face and hearing you put some perspective around these crazy times just gives me more confidence. So I know I'm
thank you. This was a lot of fun. This was awesome. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone who was Facebook Living and watching this. Awesome. Thanks.
David, thanks so much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.